Yeah, I watched how you were doing a lot of the, that was something you started this year with the, I guess the TD grind, was that
That was,
new?
yeah, kind of early this year. I
Right.
kind of started October last year, really kind of develop and grow the personal brand. And then different places I look online. A person I follow a lot, Gary Vaynerchuk, talks a lot about documenting the journey and trying to be authentic, and people respond the best to kind of just really being yourself.
Mhm.
And as an entrepreneur, it's that moves a lot of product. I'm not the kind of person that posts like a mansion with Lamborghinis in front of it, kind of thing. Like you find a lot of the younger people seduced by the ease of that life.
Right.
When in fact I kind of do it to show it's it's hard work. It's up early. It's a lot of work, and it really is a grind, which kind of led to the
Right.
TD grind along the way.
So Tyler Douthitt,
The Douthitt grind.
TD.
Yeah.
And yeah, usually you're talking about 5:15, 5 o'clock in the morning is.
Yeah,
I saw.
4:45 I normally get up during the week, and shower, and then 5 to 5:15 down here. I do that best because my wife and the kids are still asleep upstairs, so it's kind of
So you can get
the
some work
easiest,
done.
quietest time. Kind of my mind is the freshest
Right.
before anything's really
Sure.
happening.
So you're a morning person.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't really used to be, but as
Right.
time has gone by, and the once you make the switch to realizing that like every sale is money into or out of your own pocket, it's much easier to work hard.
Right. All right. Well, can you start by telling us about your background?
Background. I've always had an interest in business. I had a gift wrapping business when I was about 10 in my house, and all I had was for prospective customers, my parents and my sister, so it didn't ever get that big.
Right.
But I've always kind of had an eye for that. Then the grass cutting. Then like when I was in high school, and I always kind of had an interest in computers and all that, but when I was in high school, like the mid to late 90s, like the internet boom was all happening, and websites everywhere, people doing all this stuff, and kind of sparked my interest. And then I had my degree in computer science from SIUE, but back then it was kind of, I started programming like on my TI calculator, and then got my first domain. I think I was about 17, first website around then, and kind of stuck with things off and on along the way. Went to college, did at SIUE, got my degree there, and then afterwards, when I was that was 22, or 2005, I started working with my parents' company. My dad started it was like internet security type thing, not like firewall things, but like security cameras, DVRs, things like that people would put in a home or business, that area. So I worked there for 11 years, until I was about a year and a half ago, I stepped back, and I always kind of had the goal of getting my own things large enough to become the primary source of income, and that happened around 2 years ago, and that's when I phased myself out of my previous job. And when that happened, once I had the time kind of to really devote my time and my brain power to things, is when stuff really kind of took off. And then I got really highly involved in Amazon Prime, because the earbuds, mostly, probably 85%, ship out through Amazon Prime to customers around the country. And that's when sales really took off from there. And then I realized that one of the largest segments of customers was schools. Then I started trying to target them directly to try to attempt to siphon the business off, better margins and lower risk than selling through Amazon. And that's kind of been the goal ever since, kind of pushing the earbuds to schools. And there's really a lot of markets haven't even had the time or the ability yet to break into, thinking with airlines and tour bus charter places, the library system. They're used all over the place, and now especially with Ben helping out kind of the packing, because I was doing about probably 2 to 2.5 jobs worth here every day, and packing everything all the time, and then the administrative stuff. And then he started a few months ago, and then when he started, I was really able to focus a little more on higher level things to kind of get the actual packaging out of the way. And that's been another kind of significant step, being able to try to more smartly target the right places and find the best ways to increase sales and things like that.
So, I think you just hit on it, but when did you start your company?
The company itself, I've had a lot of, as I think most like entrepreneur people along the way, a lot of ventures that never really panned out like I thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the company TFD Unlimited, which is the legal entity that owns everything, that was founded in 2005 as a sole proprietorship, and then about 2 years ago, I created an LLC, the more legal type entity for that, and because I had always kind of thought with my computer science background, I kind of wanted to write some kind of program or some interesting thing that could scale kind of to millions of users, the whole dream of most programmers, and that never really worked out. But then I realized the market for the earbud market is
Yeah, so how did you get into the earbud business and get the business established?
When I worked with my dad for those 11 years, there was a lot of, I was always kind of sourcing things from different places in our country and overseas to try to find the right products at the right prices. And then as I kind of got better at that, I kind of had the time and the ability to look for those things that got better, and things that I would come across that weren't anything business related there, I would oftentimes perhaps buy for myself and then sell. I started selling on eBay, which then moved into Amazon and my own site as time went by. But then I started getting kind of good at that, and I would try different things, and lots of things sold okay, lots of things didn't sell at all. And then one time on a whim I thought, at the time it was 100 earbuds, and I remember thinking at the time I was like $400, and I was super small scale then, thinking it's a lot of money to invest in this.
Right.
And then those went pretty well, and I was selling them individually, and that was okay, but shipping costs ate into things so much. Then I started, as a kind of an experiment, selling them in the more bulk market, like 100 quantity for groups and organizations that would need a lot. And then it also just all kind of went from there, and the eBay sales went up. Then I moved into Amazon, and those went well. Then I did the Prime on Amazon, and things just really went from there. I just kind of have grown and scaled along the way.
Mm-hmm. So, like school, so is like a class of 30 kids or on a laptop, and then they need earbuds to listen?
A lot of it, yeah. And there's because a lot are going one-to-one, and they all have a Chromebook or some kind of tablet or some kind of device, and a lot of the curriculum has audio components, and it's, I think, a lot easier, so they can all go a little more at their own pace or replay something with more privacy than having it all hear it at the same time, and that seems to be good. And then the earbuds, a lot of schools are using headphones and are transitioning to the earbuds because the price is so much more affordable, and because the price is lower, the students can all have their own, less germs to deal with.
Oh, right.
Instead
So
of
you're
trying
not
to clean and
sharing
reuse, exactly.
headphones. It's like during the day, 6 kids are using the same
Mhm.
headphone, and then who
Yeah.
knows?
And as people have become more, I guess, aware of, I guess not aware, but concerned with lice and germs and all these
Sure.
things, like I really wouldn't want to share ear stuff with someone else. And I'm not a person overly concerned with germs,
Right.
but that's not something I
But
would.
this way, each kid can just keep their own.
Mhm.
The teacher can say, "All right, that's yours. You keep that."
That's right.
That,
Mhm.
And the school provides it.
Yeah. And then something that my wife came up with when we were trying to figure out more ways to distinguish our earbuds from other places is multiple colors. Because a lot of times schools, and they can get, there's 12 colors available right now, and they can get them in school colors to kind of help with the branding. They might sell them in a school store. A lot of teachers have been telling us to go to these principal conferences as a way to try to grow and expand. And got back from Kentucky just last night, and they tell us a lot of times to try to like color code like a room or a grade or a class or something to kind of know what belongs where.
Oh, like if
Seems
they're
helpful.
red, we know those are for the 3rd grade.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Well, that just kind of dovetailed into, we kind of hit on this next question is, can you describe the products you offer and who are your customers. Pretty much we're hitting on that. So the earbuds that's your main product?
Yes, absolutely.
Are there other products or?
There are other products, like right when you got your, Ben was packing up ice bags. I sell those, like the kind you would, if you were going to bag your own ice, some kind of ice machine or something, like those kind of bags. Those are a better seller. And over the last couple of years, I try to diversify and experiment with what works and what doesn't work. Lots of things don't. Some things do. Thankfully, enough things do that it overcomes the things that don't. And I found I really enjoy the bulk market more than the individual. Higher sales prices, and people tend to be more happy because if someone orders 100 of something, they're probably less likely to complain if one has a scratch versus if they got one and one has a scratch.
Right. So, and the devices, they work on laptops or?
Laptops, Chromebooks, which the school is using a lot, tablets. Most phones, not the newer iPhones, they have that Lightning port, but for the ones people use in schools, which is it's probably mostly geared around like computers and laptops, tablets.
Right.
A lot of them are all that one-to-one, and they all got some kind of device that they're either already using or they're moving in to using.
And your customers, where do they come from? Or and the Amazon only, or do you direct? Like when you went to Kentucky, do you make direct?
I do it direct. Yeah, probably. I don't have the exact number, but if I had to guess, probably 90% of the orders come directly through Amazon.
Okay.
And being such a obviously huge household name, it's easy to get the exposure for stuff for the sales, and
Right.
most come through there. But I have been trying to kind of siphon and extract whatever customers can be, because while a lot of schools can't order something off Amazon, a lot have to send a purchase order in, which is not as easy to do for something like that versus a credit card. So they're looking to do a PO, which is probably that 10% of orders that come directly from schools, probably half of those are just like faxed or emailed over purchase orders, and send out the goods,
Right.
send out the bill, which is helpful for their systems. The other half are ordered directly online. But I have been trying to, the margins are kind of ironically about the same amount of money is made with and without Amazon, even though about 20-25% of every sale goes right to Amazon with the Amazon Prime kind of fees and the normal commission they take off everything. It's a decent chunk, and I can sell it for less on my own directly because that commission's eliminated.
Right.
But the margins are really about the same. But there's always cutthroat competition on Amazon for everything, and you're always concerned with reviews and seller ratings,
Right.
and one really disgruntled customer that makes some claim that can cause some problems. So you're always super ultra aware, if you want to be a good Amazon seller,
Right.
of that customer service and everything. But because of there's a level of risk that comes with that. So
Right. And you got to pay them.
mhm.
Is it basically a user fee or like a service fee to be on Amazon?
As a professional seller, it's $39.99, like $40 a month, which is pretty insignificant to be a professional seller. And then the commissions vary based on the product category. The earbuds fall in the electronics category, which is probably, I want to say now it's about 11% commission for that. And then
If it goes to Amazon? Oh,
off every sale, kind of no matter what.
Oh.
And that's one of the lower categories, like cosmetics, beauty, are way higher, like
oh, really?
20%,
I didn't know that.
just right off the top, which is a lot of markup in a lot of those industries, so
Right.
it's doable. And then the other, about 15%, are the Amazon fulfillment things, which sounds like a lot initially, but oftentimes it's because they have such incredible volume, they can get super cheap rates for shipping stuff, much lower than I could get. So like if they were gonna send a box of 500 earbuds to someone, they could probably send it for a third the cost of what it would cost me to send it through UPS, just because of those extreme volumes.
Right.
So oftentimes, even though there's that fee there that includes like the credit card processing kind of fees, as well as the shipping and packing and things like that, which really oftentimes is less than if you would do it on your own. So
Oh.
even though it's about 10-15%, like shipping 100 earbuds from here might cost $6, $7, $8, and would cost probably $5 shipping it from them.
Got
And
it.
and especially because some orders are big, and not long ago, some library, I think that was the Tampa library in Florida, ordered I think 19,000 earbuds, which is a lot, and that's like they come packaged in 100, so it's 195, and of course, I have everything really well stocked, so instead of having myself or Ben pack up 195 boxes, which is doable, and pay really high UPS or mail fees, you could just fulfill it all through Amazon, plug in the quantity, 195, and then they ship it all and send it there for less work and cheaper than if you were to do it on your own. So even though they have those fees,
Right.
it's oftentimes cheaper.
But that 195 boxes you had ordered from, where did you order them to get them to Amazon?
I work with a factory overseas that I've dealt with pretty much since the beginning of the earbuds, and get a lot with them in bulk, and then when they come in here, then Amazon has all these rules and things that everything labeled and packaged in a certain way, so their big fancy warehouses can process it all just right.
Right.
So when something comes in from here, someone used to be me in the last few months, became Ben, pretty much kind of rebox, label things per their standards, and then send it off in bulk to their fulfillment centers. One we send to most often is in Joliet, Illinois, near Chicago somewhere.
And what's in Joliet?
The nearest Amazon fulfillment center.
Oh.
That because when you create your orders, when you create your fulfillment orders to send to the warehouses, they tell you where to send it to,
Got
and
it.
that's the one that they always say
Right.
to send to. And then
I think they just opened one in Edwardsville, didn't they?
they do, and when that happened, I thought I would start sending stuff there, and
But
never do. And they
they
have
tell you where to go.
yeah, they tell you where to go, and they have very fancy systems to know how to optimize things. The logistics is amazing.
Now, the factory you have overseas, can you describe that or release that or, identify that?
I can't really release or identify it, but it came with some of my knowledge and expertise that I polished up at my parents' business back then, kind of getting a hold of factories and trying to negotiate the right prices and trying to avoid getting some huge order that comes out a little bit wrong and ends up in the trash,
Right.
and trying to not have them just steal your bank wire and laugh all the way to the bank.
So it takes a while to establish a
Mhm.
trustworthy.
Because there is definite risk, because it's not hard in this country to do things, but you always take that risk of not coming out ahead and all this. And
Right.
if someone was said, I'm going to sue some Chinese factory, there's
Good
not
luck
many
with
lawyers
that.
around here that are probably going to take that case on,
Right.
and I don't speak very good Chinese,
Right.
so it would be a little hard to establish that. So there's definitely always that risk factor.
So, what about, do you release annual sales figures?
Let's see. I really prefer not to.
Okay. Most people don't,
Yeah.
except for the companies the publicly traded
I have to
companies.
disclose that, I think.
But most private ones don't tell us. As number of employees, you and Ben?
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, have an accountant who's a family friend that helps with a lot of the paperwork, but not really any kind of
Taxes,
employee.
I guess.
Yeah, taxes and things like
My
that.
dad was self-employed, so I know
That's right.
he had a very good relationship with his accountant and was
Yeah.
always trying to figure out when to do and my wife's self-employed too, so she's gotta do these quarterly.
Quarterly reports and,
Yeah.
and prepay the income
Oh,
tax.
yeah.
That's a hard one. I always used to get a refund and then suddenly switched over, send out money every
That went
quarter.
away, yeah.
That went away.
I know. So, looking back on this, what is it like to be self-employed, running a business from your home? How's it going? And
It's hard to strike a balance sometimes, because people said before, and I never really understood so much until I was there, probably as a lot of people are, self-employment, I'm a firm believer really it's a lifestyle, and a business is a lot like having a child. There's never a day I'm not a parent, there's never a day I'm not a business owner.
Right.
And as the day goes, like my kids might be at daycare or at school, and I don't have to do a lot with them then, and kind of the same with the business, but if something important with either one of my kids or the business comes up, there's not anyone to pass the buck to besides
Right.
myself.
Right.
And especially realizing that probably one of the hardest parts of striking the balance is the amount of work that I put in is directly related to how much money we make. So it's easy to be seduced to become a workaholic, and it's kind of a consuming thing that I'm always kind of on the defense to try to not become consumed by it, because
Right.
I don't want to be that kind of person that's working 14-hour days every day and barely seeing my family. For some people that works great for them, and I have no problem with that, but that's
Right.
not something I want to be.
I met a guy who runs Barcom
Yeah.
security, and interviewed him for a Q&A like this. He was working with some younger kids in an entrepreneur program.
Is that CEO program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to get involved in that in this fall.
The one that's through is it the chamber, or?
I don't think it's through the
Just
chamber.
in St. Clair County
Yeah,
schools?
I think it's east and west, and I think there's a
Yeah.
facilitator.
Yeah, he participated in
Yeah,
that.
and I
So
like the
you-
idea of that.
You're gonna volunteer? Or?
Yeah, I volunteered to.
You have?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been is Julie Cybers, something like that is the name of the facilitator. And I reached out to her and kind of said I'm doing this, and I would very much like to be involved in this, because I would have liked to have something like that available when I was
Yeah.
that age.
Right.
Because I always find it much easier to take advice from people that have actually lived it and done it.
Sure.
And business owner, operators, founders, the whole deal.
Mhm.
I think it lends a lot more merit than some
Sure.
business professor telling you how to do it versus someone that lives it day to day.
Right. I know what you mean. I felt the same way with newspaper and journalism class, when we would have actual editors. I went to school in Milwaukee, so the Milwaukee Journal would have reporters come and either teach or visit a class.
Could you go pause that, Ben? You can cut the video and bring it back.